Well, we're standing outside the Roman Catholic St. Patrick's Church here, down in Georgia Street, just off Georgia Street. The church itself dates from around 1742. It was originally founded by the Jesuits, and very interesting church insofar as that when the penal laws existed in Canada, Newfoundland, and there was no priest allowed to practice there, the Waterford people in Newfoundland would take their children back from Newfoundland and have them baptised here in St. Patrick's. The registers, I believe, even though I've never seen, are still in existence, so all the Newfoundlanders have been registered here.
My earliest memories, I suppose, would be of my father and my uncles. Tommy Byrne is my father and Paddy and Josie Byrne, my uncles. And they were very involved in the church and had a great affection for the church. And, you know, as you know, it was always known as the little chapel, whereas the cathedral was the big chapel. And they would be involved here. My father was an altar boy here for a very long time. I think he was nearly 17 when he finished up. My mum was in the choir, I was in the choir, but I remember them talking about the chapel and just the sense of affection for it and how committed they were to it. And, you know, my uncles Paddy and Josie used to joke each other because when the appointments for the priests in the diocese were coming out, they used to say to each other, I heard you were getting the red hat next, you know, that they were going to be cardinals. They were so involved. And then, you know, obviously I made my Holy Communion here. There were 7 of us, and I was in the choir, and like Kitty was saying, the Holy Hour would be down at that, and there was something called the Quarantory, wasn't that? It was like a 40,
that's right, he had that as well.
Yeah, 40 hours kind of vigil, I suppose, and you'd come in at a certain hour, and then at the end with the choir would sing. And you know, in some of those photographs, the 1940s, Father Farrell is in them, and he seemed to have a big impact on the parish when he was there. He was a very vibrant man and full of life, and he later moved to Ballybricken, the Holy Family, and he set up the carnivals.
Well, he created the Holy Family.
Yes, and the carnivals, I think, were to raise money to build up the church there. So he was there.
We had great help with the priest, Father O'Mahony and Cavan Cody. And when we go in after singing, he'd have a big teapot of tea waiting to give us. And he'd come to all the house every Christmas morning, old friend. Come in, just, you know, it was lovely times.
And the children used to call that priest Daddy Cody. I don't know if you remember that. And he'd go around, he'd greet every child, and he might give you a little sweet, and you know, there was a lovely spirit. And I don't know how historically correct it was, but the idea was that during the penal laws, that you know, this was originally a grain store, and that mass was heard here in secret, and that's why it was in a laneway, because you know, it didn't want to be known publicly that there was a service going on. And then afterwards, then the Jesuits took it over, and the grain store became this little church. I mean, that would be the kind of story we'd have heard. You know, I don't know historically how correct it is, but that's what they would have said. We always heard about Newfoundland, and because, you know, our families were involved in the parish, they had access to the parish records, and they would see and say to us that people came back from Newfoundland either to marry or to have children baptised, or that kind of thing. And you know the old story about they speak with a Waterford accent and all of that. We would have heard that type of thing, you know.
Catholic emancipation came here in 1828, 1829, so I presume if from that period, I'm not sure about Canada, if Catholic emancipation would have been enacted at the same time, but that would have then, priests would have been allowed then to practice at that era. This is a relatively new entrance. The older entrance is just down a little bit there by Welch's Pub, and that was the original entrance in, and it kind of went in, it turned left, and that was the entrance then into the church. Yeah, it was originally a grain store, and a fella called a Jesuit, a Waterford man, Father St. Ledger. He actually have it in a record of the Jesuit himself that he actually got money from his friends in Salamanca in Spain and some of his Irish friends, and they built the church here. So that was around 1742.